We've been drawing in crayon to outline all of our shapes and the objects that are going to be in our landscape. And then we used watercolor paints with the cool colors. We used blue, green, and purple to paint our Winter Wonderland landscape. Today we're going to do some printmaking. We are going to use some white tempera paint that I have here. I'm going to use the white tempera paint, and we're going to use these snowflake stamps that I have made. They're on a small wooden peg, and they have a foam snowflake that is glued to it. And we're going to spread the paint around with our foam brush, and then we're going to print with the snowflake. After we get done, we're going to use Q-tips to add some white to our snow and our snowman. So let's start with the paint. Today's paint is liquid tempera paint. It's washable tempera. We're going to use our brush to spread it out pretty thin. It needs to be very flat and thin with no bumps in it. I'm going to lay my brush here to the side into the white paint. I'm going to check and make sure it's covered in white. It is. And I'm going to start printing my snowflakes. So I just press down and then lift it up. Wow, that turned out great. I'm going to go over any snowflakes that I drew in a color besides white first. Some of us used some colors for our snowflakes, and some people drew all their snowflakes in white. And some people didn't get a chance to draw snowflakes. That's okay. We're going to add in our snowflakes today. So each time I press it into the paint, I take a quick look to make sure it's covered. The important part of printmaking is when you press it down, don't move it around. So I'm just going to keep pressing it down. I'm not pressing hard. I'm just setting it on the paper. And if you don't get all of it like on that one, that's okay. So I drew some of my snowflakes in blue. I'm covering all of my blue snowflakes. If you drew snowflakes in green, make sure you cover up your green snowflakes. And if you drew your snowflakes in brown, please make sure you cover up your brown snowflakes with a white snowflake print. Now, if you get too much paint on it, it starts to get in between the arms of the snowflake, and it doesn't make as nice of a print. So don't get too much paint. Don't slide it around in the paint. Just press down and then press on your paper. Notice how my snowflakes are not in a straight line. There are a few up high and a few down low, and I like that I have a lot of my drawn white snowflakes also still showing. About 10 is about as many as you want. You don't even have to have that many. Now I'm going to put my snowflake stamp aside for a minute. I'll just set it down there on my tray. And now I'm done with my brush. I'm done with my printmaking. It's time for me to use my Q-tip. Part of the reason we're using Q-tips today is I want you to remember, if you want to paint at home and you don't have a paintbrush, or maybe your paintbrush is dried out or the bristles are falling out, you can use other objects like this foam print that I just did, or a Q-tip or a cotton ball. So I'm just going to roll the tip of it to get it covered up good. And the first thing I want to do is just go over my snowman some. I'm not trying to make him solid white. I still want to see some of those colors coming through, where we did the mouth and the eyes. So I don't go over it till it's solid white, but I do want to go over it and cover up a lot of the blue paper that's back behind it. So I'm just remembering that shape of the circle. We talked about how we draw a circle and then we added a few more lines to make it resemble a sphere, since we know that our snowman is a 3D sphere. Each section of his body, small, medium, and large, each one is a 3D sphere. And so I just hold that Q-tip a lot like a paintbrush, and I'm real careful I'm not putting my hand down into the wet paint that I've already printed. And go really thin. You don't want any pools or cakes of paint when you're painting with the Q-tip. And I'm always rolling it because the more you use it, little pieces of cotton start to come off of it. So make sure you kind of roll up those extra pieces. And it's cool because you can see each stroke, each curve you make with the Q-tip. So I go back and forth over those so you don't see those too much. And I like it to be kind of thin in the middle and the paint to be thicker on the sides. But your art's going to look different from mine because we're different artists. Then I want to use a little bit of my white for my snow down here at the bottom. I don't want to cover up all of my purple paint. What we're doing is we're adding highlights. Everybody say highlights. So highlights are where the sun is bright and where it is hitting the snow. Shadows are the purple parts, the parts that aren't getting as much sunlight. So anytime we're drawing a landscape like this, we have to think about where the highlights are and where the shadows are. So I've got more highlights up at the top and more shadows down at the bottom, I'm sure. And I know when we started this, we drew a little bit in white crayon, and then we painted with watercolor paint, and there's no white watercolor paint. So it looked like our snow scene was really dark, but as you can see, we're coming back with the white and adding the highlights on top. And that's the way artists often work. They'll do their darker colors for the shadows, and then they'll come back and do white highlights on top. The last thing I'm going to do is add a little bit of snow with white on parts of my tree. I don't want to cover my tree up totally, but I want some snow on the branches. I don't want it to be all green. I like how the evergreen trees, like these pine trees, the snow sort of piles up on them and then it falls down in big clumps. So I'm just adding a little snow to my trees. I can't wait to see how yours turns out. I hope you have fun today doing printmaking and Q-tip painting.